So let's start with what's going on here today, right? You know, with this focus on digital transformation. Let's start with the definition. I mean, there are multiple definitions, but oftentimes, we use digital transformation as a very effective process of using digital technologies, to create new processes and experiences, to meet changing requirements, in this case, of the citizens, right? Because the focus of the government is service to citizens, whereas the commercial enterprise focuses on other drivers, as we will see later. But then, what's going on today, in our opinion, and this is somewhat of a provocative statement, and the concept of digital transformation, while it's being discussed in various quarters, it hasn't caught the attention of the government's ears yet. And, there are multiple reasons for that, right? Again, as Scott pointed out previously, in his presentation, in the fireside chat, the government moves at a different pace. It looks at things very differently. It is not exactly a business driver, right? It's not about profitability. It's about something, that has to fit into an agenda, again, and there should be a key driver for that. So for that reason, that could explain some as to what's going on. And then there is also sometimes a mistaken belief that just because digital transformation has got to do with effective use of technology, it's all about using emerging technology. Then that doesn't help either in terms of advancing the agenda. But more importantly, what appears to be a very valid reason, though, is the federal government has really devoted itself to the concept of enterprise architecture and IT investment management. For a period of time, since 2000, the government has made, there's a lot of regulatory framework behind it, going back to President Bush and even before then to the Clinton administration by way of, Paperwork Reduction Act and then the President's Management Agenda, lately, with FITARA. So EA has become a fairly significant component of a CIO's thinking, and that, again, going hand in hand with IT investment management, with CPIC processes, the capital planning and investment control processes. All of these are very rigorous. Somewhere in there, this whole concept of digital transformation doesn't necessarily register, and that's quite understandable. Now, that being said, though, there is no question that, digital transformation is here to stay. It is happening. It's ongoing. And that's a big focus in the commercial sector. Because if you look at any commercial company enterprise, they all take pride in the fact that they have launched a digital transformation initiative or some digital transformation initiatives. And they are explained in terms of how they have changed their business model, their profitability, much to the benefit of their investors, their shareholders, and more importantly, the customers as well, right? But then, that being said, again, coming back to the government arena, part of what happens again is, with all this EA and IT investment management, digital transformation becomes one more thing to worry about. And sometimes, it sounds complex and confusing and appears challenging to implement, right? But then, today, when we look at the current pandemic situation, for the federal government also, this COVID-19 has highlighted the importance of transformation. Whether we like it or not, a lot of things have happened. The federal government, was thinking in terms of a remote workforce, but for the past 1 year has to largely rely on a remote workforce. And in a matter of, few weeks, they managed to stand up an environment within which, workers were able to, get their job done, right? So what does this mean then? It means that, for the right drivers, for the right reasons, it can catch the attention of the right people. And that's what we'll talk about, right? But in doing so, something that I want to also mention is this is not about hype, right? We got to be able to resist hype and focus more on outcomes. And today, as we talk more about this later, we will see the enablers that make this to be very outcome driven. Now, I will also observe that, as much as I said that, the federal government is not exactly on the forefront of a digital transformation agenda, there's a lot of digital stuff going on today. There is no question. There's a digital this, digital that. I mean, you have, a digital services division of the federal government, a lot of digital initiatives, but many of them are seen as a part of IT modernization initiatives where typically they tend to solve point problems. What we would like to really articulate as a hypothesis is you need to take a more expansive view of transformation, especially from the standpoint of digital transformation, and think in terms of something that really creates value. And the question comes up: what does value mean? Right? How do you define that? So these become the key questions. Right? With that said,